Are you looking for a new state in 2023? If you are, you're not alone. Like I said in our Going Downhill version of this series, 2023 is predicted to be one of the most active years for state-to-state relocation on record. Today I'm going to tell you the ones that might be your best option if you're one of those that are in the hunt for a new state. As we come out of the pandemic, a lot of states have started to turn things around. Every state took a hit in the last few years. Some states, in my opinion, have set themselves up for success post-COVID, and those are the ones we're looking at today. This video is my opinion based on information that I've taken in over the last year. Are these states perfect? No. Do they have some problems? Yes. But in my opinion, the next few years compared to the other 40 states, they should be making more progress towards that American utopia we all dream of. Keep in mind, these are just my opinions and why they're my opinions. Yours are just as valid, I'm sure, and I'd love to hear about them in the comments section below. Get it? Got it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Idaho. Idaho has always been in the top 10 list for most moved to states, I would say for at least the last decade and a half. In 2018 and 17, they kind of dropped out of the top 5, but they're back, baby. And no, it's not mostly liberal Californians moving to Idaho. I know the people of Idaho think that's what it is, but a majority of the people leaving California for Idaho are already voting along the same lines as most of Idaho. It's kind of why they're moving there. They don't like the politics of California, so they're moving there. The ones that just can't afford California anymore tend to move to Utah, Oregon, Washington, and Nevada probably. The good news about moving to Idaho is they got low crime, they got decent schools, their metro areas aren't totally huge, they got a lot of nice small towns, plenty of things to do outdoors, and their cost of living isn't crazy. Sure, if you move to like a resort town or something like that, it's going to be a little high, but most of Idaho is pretty reasonable. Is it Mississippi cheap? Absolutely not. Is it cheaper than California? Uh-huh. I just talked to someone about 2 weeks ago that left California for Idaho. Actually, they're one of the people who watch this channel. Let me know that they used one of the realtors I suggested. I actually didn't suggest the realtor. It's a website that I have a link down below called Home and Money. They will help you find a realtor, grants, programs, build your credits, affordability calculator, all that good stuff's on the website. Number 9, Wyoming. Wyoming, I think, is a state in the next few years is going to start seeing some positive migration, and it's because of the remote worker thing going on. Wyoming's an affordable state. For a long time, I wouldn't have suggested them because they don't have the best internet in some of their rural towns, but now with that Starlink thing, Wyoming apparently is doing really good when it comes to internet connection with Starlink. So they're affordable, a lot of open land, peace and quiet. Beautiful state. If you're a remote worker that loves to hunt and fish, this is probably the best state for you. In the last few months, they're one of the states where their home prices have gone down a little bit. I wouldn't say gone down, they kind of stayed level a little bit longer than most states. And about 35% of the homes that had been put up for sale had actually reduced their price within the last 90 days. Some of the other ones on this list are far more drastic than that, but I thought that was kind of cool. Starting to show prices are getting ready to come down a little bit on home buying. But I think Wyoming is going to benefit in a big way from the changes that we have in the world now post-COVID. Granted, COVID's still around, but we're coming out of it. Number 8, Vermont. Vermont is one of my favorite states. It is a beautiful state. It's amazing. It gets really cold winters and it can get expensive, but there's basically no crime. They got great schools, great place to have a family. And again, especially if you're a remote worker or if you're a retiree that doesn't mind the cold weather, this is a great state. There's a little town in Vermont named Woodstock, and I dream about moving to that place. Sort of like one of those towns, if you don't like to relax and take it easy, the winter, build snowmans and drink hot cocoa, it's probably not the best option for you. Number 7, New Hampshire. Yes, Vermont and New Hampshire always go hand in hand because they share a lot of the same things. Extremely safe. They're always in the top 3 for crime and safety. Beautiful landscapes, again, cold winters. Their real estate is going down a little bit, so that's a plus. And like all states, their inflation's up there a little bit, maybe a tad bit more than everyone else. But I mean, that's just the world we're living in right now. The last videos I did on this, everyone's, oh, you didn't talk about inflation. We all know about inflation, but it's kind of universal across the board with maybe a percentage or two here and there. What's the point of bringing something up if we all know about it and every state has it at about the same level? Again, I think the remote working thing is going to change New Hampshire in a big way. Now, I'm not saying hundreds of thousands of people are going to be flooding in there in the next few years, but they will gain some population, and it'll be a great thing for the state. You have people that don't need jobs, and they're putting tax dollars into the local economy. It's like a win-win. Number 6, Minnesota. Minnesota is kind of turning things around. Not like they were a horrible state to begin with, but in the last few years, especially since the pandemic, they're kind of moving in the right direction with a lot of things like jobs. They've got decent schools. Their crime isn't terrible. I know you want to bring up Minneapolis or something that went on there, whatever, but overall, this state doesn't have a lot of crime. A lot of that has to do with poverty. Poverty usually breeds crime. Whether you like it or not, or whatever you want to say about it, it's just a fact. And it's not anything to do with anything racial or anything like that. It's just if people don't have a lot of money, they do a lot of stupid stuff, whether it's to get money or they have a lot of time on their hands. There's a whole lot that goes into it. But part of the reason Minnesota doesn't have a really high crime rate is they don't have a lot of poverty. If you got kids, the state provides excellent early education opportunities. And they rank 5th in the nation for K through 12 performance. Great state all the way around. You just got to deal with some pretty brutal winters. To a lot of people, that's a deal breaker, and I get it. I'm one of those people that's not a deal breaker. Snow, more than any other place? Absolutely, count me in. My wife, on the other hand, isn't happy unless it's over 85. Number 5, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's a little bit of a weird one. I think a lot of you are going to kind of question me on this one, and I'll tell you why I think they're doing good. Again, with the remote workers, they have a lot of affordable and nice small towns throughout that state, not just Honesdale, which I love. They've got a lot of really nice small towns that you could move to, work, live an affordable life, get some decent real estate, and not have to make $1 million a year to do that. Amazing wooded areas, creeks, streams, rivers, and ponds and lakes everywhere in that state. If you're coming from someplace like Arizona or California where there's like no water, you will be amazed at Pennsylvania. You walk down a path and there's a spring that's been bubbling for 90 years and nobody's capped it and tried to, water their crops with it or something like that, or put it in a bottle and sell it. Of course, Pennsylvania does have some cities you probably want to stay away from. Actually, we're talking about the going downhill ones, and Philadelphia falls into the category of never move here. Pittsburgh, you could think about it. Philadelphia is definitely a hard pass. Pittsburgh is also one of those cities that has a pretty high rate of houses that have dropped their price. In the last 3 months, 45% of the homes that have been put on the market in Pittsburgh have had a price cut. Outside of Philadelphia, Scranton, and Pittsburgh, you don't have a lot of crime in the smaller areas of Pennsylvania. Now, I say that knowing you can find some pockets where you're going to find some crime, but overall, compared to other states, it's not that terrible outside of Philadelphia and somewhat Pittsburgh. But Pennsylvania is one of those states that's really trying hard to turn it around to get more people moving into the state, especially remote workers. So I think they're going to be moving in the right direction in 2023. Number 4, Utah. Utah these days always shows up on some positive list. Whether it's a great place to have a business, it's a great place to raise a family, go to college, not get pistol whipped at an ATM machine. The American dream. Utah currently is the state with the best economy. That doesn't mean they're turning out the most like California. Obviously, California's the largest economy. Utah's the strongest economy. If you look at all of their stats that everyone looks at, like crime, education, healthcare, economy, 3 years ago, half of them were in the top 15. Currently, there's only one outside the top 10. And that's healthcare, and that's ranked 11th in the country, so they're moving in the right direction. They've always been good, they're just getting better. I honestly think that Utah within the next few years will be the most moved to state. I think one of the things that keep them back, I've said this before, a lot of people just think they're run by the Mormon church, like you shouldn't go there if you're not a Mormon. Mormon church has a lot of control in that state, but they let other people in too. So don't worry, move to Utah. Number 3, South Carolina. This is another one that needs a lot of explanation. South Carolina is moving the right direction when it comes to a lot of their cities. They have a truckload of small towns that should be avoided at all costs, but a lot of their cities are getting a lot better. Charleston's one of them. Almost anywhere in the low country, which is Charleston on down to the border of Georgia near Savannah. You go all the way up to Greenville, that's doing better than it has in years. Columbia is Columbia. It's still about the same. Spartanburg, which is just northeast of Greenville is doing better than it has in years. One I will tell you about, which most people think it's amazing if they've never been there, it's Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach is a great place to lay on the beach. That's about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, their beaches are beautiful. It's just not that great of a town anymore. But the rest of the state, I think, is truly moving in the right direction as far as livability, economy, things like that. But if you do want to move to South Carolina, definitely look at the Low Country. That's your best bet. You're talking Charleston, Hilton Head, one of my favorite towns in the South, Bluffton. Number 2, Missouri. Here's another one that's going to need a little explaining. Missouri has not been great for a long time. I mean, you're talking about a place that has both St. Louis and Kansas City in its border. Those two cities are so bad they let other states claim half of them. Springfield, Missouri is not great and it's got a pretty bad history, but I think they've turned the corner in the last 2 years. Again, with the remote workers, they're starting to kind of eye Missouri because it is affordable. Outside its major cities, they don't have a ton of crime. It's beautiful. If you like to be outdoors and especially on the water, they have some amazing places to do that. I've talked about Lake of the Ozarks a few times. That is a great place to be around. And it is home to the most unfortunately named restaurant I've ever seen, and I've talked about them here before. That's right, we're talking about Big Dick's Halfway Inn. It bills itself as a funky lakeside pit stop with pub grub. This is the type of place you get potato skins with your 6th Bud Light. But if you look at the cost of living, you look at housing prices, Missouri is a good option, especially if you're a remote worker or retiree. Missouri is one of the states that's been affected the least by the inflation that we've been having, and their home prices are affordable and going down a touch. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't, and then head on over to our other channel on this day and do the same thing there. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Washington State. So there's a lot going on in Washington. There's a lot of good. They just got a lot of homeless, and Seattle is extremely expensive. But prices are starting to go down there, and especially when it comes to real estate in Seattle. Not just Seattle, the entire state of Washington. Earlier, we had talked about states and cities that they'd seen price cuts in real estate. In Tacoma, in the last 90 days, 49.5% of the homes on the market had a price cut. In Seattle, 46.3% of them. And that's the type of thing that's going on throughout the state. I've been looking at real estate in southern Washington, near Camas and Washougal, and most of the things on Zillow, Redfin, whatever you're looking at, you could see that they've had a price cut recently. Washington also is, I'd say, somewhat getting a handle on their homeless in the Seattle-Tacoma area. Is it perfect? Far from it. Has it gotten better over the last 18 months, maybe 2 years? I think so. Now, there's a certain portion of the population in Washington state that whenever you say anything positive about the state, they're there to tell you how bad it is. I've said this before, but Washington shows up consistently on lists for the best states. It does have a lot of negatives and it does have a lot of hurdles that need to be taken care of, but Washington State has a lot of good too. I mean, it doesn't hurt that they're one of the states that doesn't have a state income tax. Now, the reason they're on this list for states moving in the right direction, I think in 2023 some things will happen. 1, real estate prices will be going down. Tourism is back. That means more income for local economies, especially in places like Seattle where the cruise lines came back. They're starting to make progress, like I'd said, on the homeless situation. You know, if they clear up some of those things and some of those things happen the way I think they will, Washington's going to be in a better position this time next year. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Don't forget to leave a comment. Tell me what you thought. What state should have been on this list? Which one do you think shouldn't have been on the list? All right, everyone. Have a great day. Be nice to each other.